Listen, 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 listen.
What's going on? Episode 10 of the Listen Show. Today we are going to be talking about strings. I should have said this last week, but what I'm trying to pass on with these instrumental studies is it's like being a painter looking at colors and what colors to mix. Guitars are like a brushstroke or a combination of colors to make a color unique to the artist. I took one art class in college, and one of the dopest things that I found out was that painters create and trademark their own colors, like 5 drops of white and 30 drops of blue to make a specific blue. We talked about sound selection and harped on making sure everything makes sense, and that's still a law to me. Like Picasso and Warhol, their art might not be like what we see as reality, but it still makes sense in the end. But also art has a message, and just like Warhol had a point, just like the director of Inception wants to say something specific, so do producers and composers for the most part, in my opinion. At a certain point, as an artist, making a piece, you decide to go in a certain direction, because really any melody fits over any beat and vice versa. At a certain point, you pick up the brush and you start to paint exactly the picture that you want to paint. So you decide whether to go ballad or trap or whatever you decide. With these instrument studies, I'm hoping to help you mix colors and at least point out the colors so they're easier to mix. And I'm going to focus on like string sections, whether it be like actual recorded in string sections or virtual instrument string sections. This is an instrument where it is played, or how it is played affects what emotion is given off. This is in contrast to guitar, where how it is affected or what guitar you play, like acoustic versus electric, affects the emotion more than how it is played. Violins can be played holding long sweeping notes or fast frantic notes in motion. If you've ever watched a violin player, you can tell what's going on. For long ballady elegant portions, you can see them take a deep breath and sway their head and upper torso area back and forth. With faster passages, they violently shake their head back and forth, and if they have long hair, it flies everywhere. And if you watch their motions and the way they move during the passages they play is indicative of the emotion the composer is trying to convey. So, with all that being said, here are a few examples of songs. First is the Earth song by Michael Jackson. This song is a perfect example of having a big movie sound, the contrast of little instrumentation building up to a climax to help get that big sound. But that's a different show. We're here to talk about the strings in specific. In this song, the strings are there to set the atmosphere. In the beginning, it's just Mike and a synth. Mike has a little bit of reverb, what sounds like a slap delay. And it's just Mike singing, and it sounds like he's just singing by himself in like an empty auditorium. Then when he says, "Did you ever stop to notice?" the strings come in and they fill space, and it gives the song a little bit of body. In this song, the strings are a cog in the machine. They fill space and set the foundation for the full picture to be painted. Next, Kanye West's Dark Fantasy, the beginning track of My Beautiful. In the beginning, the strings are given body to the piano, just backing it up. Sounds like a handful of cellos and maybe some string basses play the bass under the piano, and that's just a subtle touch. Then when the verse comes, the verse section that is looped, the cellos are playing, and the cellos are playing the bass, but they are playing eighth notes, which gives the music some momentum. Like It's like the sound of a train chugging along, and that's the strings section. That's the strings function to keep the track moving. Kanye does this in a lot of his music. Sometimes when there are no drums, he keeps the track moving without the usual pace and heartbeat of the drums by having that eighth note, constant eighth notes playing in the bass. Next, the 2001 Alex North version of the Space Odyssey movie scene, the space docking. I'm gonna put a link to a specific video in the description so you can hear exactly what I hear. Hopefully it stays up long enough for you guys to hear it. At first in the song, the strings are doing some fast moving parts, quick hits, and it's like controlled chaos. Then the strings come together and almost do like sweeps, and the flutes respond while the other instruments ornament around the strings and flute. And the strings are the main feature and are used to make you feel like you are floating in space. When the strings do the sweeps, the combination of all of them playing their specific parts is beautiful to me. Strings have that certain timbre and tone to them that makes everything more grandiose. Like that idea of getting a big sound, strings greatly help that. So that is another example of how strings can be used. When they're the main focus, just having them all play something together, whether they're playing the same note or not, the sound of them all playing together and them being highlighted is always that movie theater type sound. Last song we're gonna cover today is Dolla Sign's song called Miracle / Wherever. Another way strings can be used is to bring out a single line of a chord progression. And what I mean is, if you have an instrument like a piano or a pad playing chord changes, obviously the bass will be playing the bass line and it will highlight those specific notes. But a way to get some contrast and play with not really tension, but just to highlight a different line, almost make it like a counter melody, is to put the fifths or the thirds in the strings, or any like strings, brass, lead synth, all that kind of stuff. But you can put a fifth and the thirds in the strings and it'll almost be like a counter melody. It'll just bring out something that the ear doesn't normally hear. Since strings cut through the mix, like I said, it'll be a good way to add some color. Our ears naturally hear the lowest and the highest notes played on a chord. We hear it the easiest. So the bass already pops and is highlighted by whatever instrument is playing the bass line. And then you put the fifth, or you take the MIDI from whatever instrument is playing the chords, and you just delete everything under the top line, and you'll get some good, almost like a counter melody, but really it's just highlighting something that the ears don't normally gravitate to. And that's another way to use strings. Like I said before, like strings are a very beautiful instrument, very easy way to get that movie sound, to make it very dramatic, to get that grand sound. I recommend listening to some classical music. I recommend listening to anything with strings in it, just to see how. I recommend listening to classical music. I recommend listening to soundtracks again and film scores. Hans Zimmer is definitely an easy one to look up. I don't know too many. Hans Zimmer is like the main guy. So yeah, that's it. There'll be a listening list in the description. Always hold me accountable. Tell me what I can do better. And thank you for listening.